philosopher named Friedrich Schleiermacher. Great name. Wish he had that last name, Schleiermacher. He's famous for saying that human beings are homo religiosus. Now, that's a mouthful. To go with a mouthful of a last name, homo religiosus. Homo means same in Latin, and religiosus is religion. So same religion. And what he's saying is that we as human beings are all universal, and that they have a deep need, desire, and longing for religion. That we can't not long for it as human beings. And I believe this is true. I believe that we as human beings, one of the things that makes us unique is that we are spiritual. We are spiritual beings, and we all have a spiritual religious need, a deep spiritual religious need. And Jesus calls us as his people to minister to that need. One professor named Darrell Bock, he wrote an entire book on the Gospel of Luke, and he says this about the passage that we're looking at today. I'll read this for you. I thought this was helpful. Evangelism requires engagement. That's our theme word for the year, engage. It often requires serving people as well as preaching to them, telling unbelievers that God cares to be reinforced by evidences of such caring. That the disciples, we got a little spelling error here, the disciples were involved in, just because the disciples were involved in miraculous activity does not mean that miraculous ministry is necessarily called for today. The key to the disciples' activity was the combination of and compassion with the message of the gospel preached in word and deed. God can and may act in a sovereign display of power, a supernatural thing, but usually our ministry of evangelism requires a more mundane approach, but one that's just as meaningful. Last Sunday night, there were 4 cop cars outside of my house in our neighborhood, and I looked outside my window and could see there was all kinds of activity happening at my next door neighbor's house just to the left of our house. And after a little while of wondering what was going on, there was a knock on my door from one of my neighbors and said, "Hey, Dwayne, we got to talk to you." And so I invited them, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you come out here?" And so I did, and another neighbor from across the street joined us. And what they told me is that my next door neighbor, Peter, he had hung himself in his garage that day. And they asked me to come out. They said, "Dwayne, you're the pastor. What do we do?" And I didn't really feel like super on my A game. I just had surgery. I was like hopped up on all kinds of medication. And so, but in my immediate reaction, I said, "Well, we need to pray, and I'm concerned for Sue. We need to think about how to care for Sue and do whatever we can to help you." I'll tell you a little bit about Sue. Her full name is Suzuki Yama. She's this sweet Japanese gal. She owns the house next door. Met her when we first bought the house and moved in just a little over 7 years ago now. She met Peter just this last year on an online dating thing, and they kind of hit it off at first, and he moved in. But in the last few months, things have kind of fallen apart, and so he was planning on moving out. I just talked to him the Friday or Thursday before, and he was telling me how down he was about it. Became very depressed, and in a low moment of weakness, he took his life. So we've been checking on Sue. The next day, I went over just to see how she was doing, and she just looked at me and she started crying. I'm like, "Can I just give you a hug?" And she was crying and trying to minister to Sue. My wife and I, we went over to her house the other day. We brought her flowers and a card, and we're trying to help out, trying to love her. We're praying for her and that Jesus cares for her, trying to help get rid of Peter's things out of her house so that she can move on. Sue, there wasn't some like magical thing. She's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'll become a Christian." She's not a Christian yet. We're praying for her. We're talking with her. We're trying to love her. And we do hope and pray that through that she will come to see the compassion, the care, and the love of Jesus, our Savior. You see, both Sue and Peter had deep need, universal need that we all as human beings have. The need for connection, the need for love, ultimately really the need for God. In this world, we all experience brokenness. We live in a broken world. Ever since things went haywire in the beginning, things simply do not go right in life. That's the reality of life. We experience pain, we experience hurt, we experience disappointment, we experience failure, our own and other people failing us. And that is hard. It's hard. I promise you this. Everyone, everywhere you go, everywhere, people are in need. People are hurting. People have deep needs. And in that, we have great opportunity as God's people. We have great opportunity to show people the love of Jesus. So here's what I want to ask you. What are the needs around you? What are the needs around you? Are you aware? Are you paying attention? Are you looking for opportunities to minister to people, to their needs? They're hurting people. Do you know your neighbors' names? Do they know your name? Are you the one that whether your neighbors or your friends or your coworkers, that when crisis hits, you're the one that they're going to call? Because they know this person actually cares. They sense it. They can sense the love of Jesus exuding from you in the way that you conduct yourself and the things that you say. Are you aware? Or are you just all wrapped up into your own world and just everything in your life is all about you all of the time? Are you aware? Everyone is in need. May God help us to be sensitive to people's needs and open so that we can get beneath the surface with people and minister to their true spiritual needs.